the shootout and heat, it's the infinitive, to leave. They're, get out of there.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I want to start at the end, if you don't mind, the final race sequences, which I think are some of the most tensely choreographed, beautifully shot, flawlessly edited scenes you've ever done, that in a lot of ways reminded me of how flawless the shootout and heat was, both technically perfect, but also how you managed to sort of deal with multiple storylines happening all at once. So while they're totally different sequences, I'm curious if you learned anything putting together that shootout and heat 30 years ago that was still put to practice 3 decades later in some of the racing sequences in Ferrari.
The commonality is that choreography has to have a story. There has to be a story behind it, and because it has to have a story, it's the same as a dramatic scene. A scene with action, whether it's cars or shootout in heat, or round one of the Ali Liston fight in Ali. It requires a story analysis, and then that tells you what to do. So in the shootout and heat, it's the infinitive, to leave. They're get out of there. That's what they're trying to do, and they're employing all the tactics they know about suppressing fire to get out, because they know that other assets are coming in constantly. And in Ferrari, the overall impetus behind the driving started with, what do I want? Well, I want to subjectify the audience. I want them to feel that agitation, that struggle to keep your focus on the next turn. Now, you're not clocking where you are, you're clocking what's coming up next. And so that agitation, so I wanted to subjectify it. It's not difficult to shoot beautiful images with long lenses of cars winding their way through gorgeous Tuscan hills. That, to me, would push audience away and make them into observers. I want to do the exact opposite. I wanted to subjectify the intensity of being in these beautiful and at the same time savagely powerful machines. And if you get one thing wrong, that's it. It'll take off on its own.
One of my favorite details is I read that a lot of the drivers didn't want to wear seatbelts just because they'd rather be thrown from the car than be buckled in, which I loved. I know that you knew or have known Enzo's son, Piero Ferrari, for many, many years, and you were able to speak with him to prepare for this film. But are there any questions that you would have loved to have asked Enzo that you just never felt like you had the right to ask his son, that maybe even today you still wish you knew the answer to?
Well, Piero's been a friend for 20 years. I and the movie are the beneficiary of his trust and faith, and everything was open, everything was exposed, and he's in the movie as a 12-year-old illegitimate child, the bastard child of Enzo. His mother's there, and his father's there. So obviously it was a great leap of faith for him to be as open and cooperative as he was. We also, when you see things in the film like the mausoleum, that is the family's real mausoleum. The house is their house. The Storky's next door. The barbershop's 150 feet around the corner. That's the same barbershop. Adam's being shaved in the same chair that Enzo was in. The guy shaving him is the son of the barber who shaved Enzo. So, it's so, there's an osmosis, because there's so much of the actuality from the 50s that we enjoyed. But what would I ask Enzo? It would have been fascinating to meet him in person. I find him incredibly witty and with his dark humor. And by the way, it's the Modenese sense of humor to me is very much like a basic Chicago sense of humor. It's very tough-minded. It's a little dark. It's kind of like the Berliner wit of the 1920s and 1930s in Berlin. You think of My Girl Friday, there's some sarcasm and wit to it that I really responded to.
I mean, the fact that his reaction to someone, a driver dying is, well, his mother pushed him into a relationship. So I just thought, oh my God. Mr. Mann, this is seriously, I've always wanted to speak with you, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you've done in Chicago. We appreciate you, sir.
Great. Thanks so much.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.